In our neck of the woods, sports is tradition. Sports is passion. Sports is family. Sports is fun. Welcome to our house. This is Southeast Sports Plus Live with Simone Eli and Gerhard Mathangani.
Well, just before we get the third edition of the College Football Playoff Committee rankings, it'll be sandwiched in between a pair of really good basketball games, and this has become a tradition. Kentucky, now one of the teams that will take the spotlight at the Mecca of basketball at Madison Square Garden as they face Tom Izzo and the Michigan State Spartans in a top 20 battle at MSG. Kentucky, an early favorite in this one. Welcome to Southeast Sports Plus. I'm Gerhard Mathangani, joined by Patrick Walsh. Patrick, this has been one of my favorite parts about what they've done with the committee rankings. They sandwich it right in between a pair of really big basketball games, and it always seems to me that Kentucky, Duke, Michigan State, all the blue bloods happen to be a part of it.
Yeah, and it's sandwiched in between two really good games, not only Kentucky, Michigan State tonight, but also Kansas, Duke that will follow after at Madison Square Garden. So a couple of games that definitely will have the eyes of not only college basketball fans, but football fans alike because of the fact that the rankings will be sandwiched in between the two games. I believe the MSU Kentucky tip-off is 5:30 Central, 6:30 Eastern. So right after that should be when, or probably at halftime actually.
Yes,
because they usually come out at 7:30 Eastern.
Yes.
So yeah, probably right around halftime.
Yeah,
will be when the rankings come out, and we'll get to what we think about the rankings later. But first, we'll talk about some basketball here. It feels like, and we'll have Ian Kress from Lansing on here in a minute, but it feels like this year Tom Izzo is coming for vengeance against the SEC after falling to Auburn. I didn't realize the Auburn loss was the first loss to an SEC team in the tournament for him. So should be interesting. Obviously got that big one over Arkansas last week. But, should be a really good matchup tonight.
Absolutely. And Michigan State, credit them for scheduling a pair of SEC powerhouses, both Arkansas as well as Kentucky. Of course, like you mentioned, Auburn played them last year in the Elite Eight. Michigan State got the win there, and Coach Izzo and company will look to get a little revenge, as you said, coming out of that game in Madison Square Garden. And that is exactly where we're headed right now here, Patrick.
Yeah, let's bring on Ian here from New York City. Let's go, Ian.
What's up, man?
Hey, how you guys doing?
Good. How are you?
Good, doing well.
I hear you. Big one tonight. Obviously, you cover Michigan State really well. Tom Izzo and company. We just mentioned it moments ago. Tom Izzo had not lost to an SEC team in the Big Dance, and then seemingly got a bit of revenge when they got a big win over Arkansas, and now Kentucky lines the floor this year. What do you make of what Tom Izzo's been able to do with this team, with this roster here in the early parts of the season?
Yeah, it's kind of similar to last year's group. It's not the most talented Tom Izzo team that you've seen, but last year's team was able to win the Big Ten by 3 games and then go all the way to the Elite Eight before falling to Auburn. So I think on paper they're probably not the most talented. They don't have a lot of guys who are probably going to go in the first round of the draft, but at the same time, the Tom Izzo basketball, they like to play tough, they're physical, and I think it's going to be a heck of a game tonight at Madison Square Garden.
This has been a really cool tradition, being able to put marquee college basketball games in these big-time arenas. Coach Izzo's been around the block before. He knows how to take teams deep into the NCAA tournament, and I think that he understands from a philosophical perspective, it's games like this that'll help get his team ready. What is his mindset when it comes to these neutral site games in these big-time arenas as he gets his team ready for a very long grind throughout the regular season and then in the postseason?
Yeah, it's typical Tom Izzo to have a tough non-conference schedule. You know, they played Arkansas at home, and I think if that game was played anywhere else outside of East Lansing, Michigan State probably loses that game, but it's still a good test. They played at UConn for an exhibition game, and that's a game that Tom Izzo credits the Arkansas win to, just because it gave them a real opportunity to see what they're like in an environment that they're not used to that early. And now it's kind of going to be the same thing. Neutral site, not sure what the fans going to look like in terms of who's rooting more for MSU or Kentucky, or maybe Kansas and Duke fans come in and root for one of the other teams. So I don't know how they'll handle that, but I do know they're battle tested early in the season, which is pretty common for a Tom Izzo-led team.
Ian, I know Tom Izzo, after the last game, talked about how he doesn't like to talk about trap games. He doesn't believe in trap games. But what did you make of the performance of the Spartans that game? I know they didn't really shoot it from the line that well.
Yeah, they're not shooting that well from three or free throws so far in the season, but they're working on that. He's pretty confident that they'll be able to turn that around. They didn't play a great second half against San Jose State, so he kind of got a little upset with his leaders that game, and he said after in the post-game press conference that if they play like that tonight, they're going to get killed by Kentucky. So he was not too confident on Thursday, but then we talked to him on Sunday, and he said that they had two of the better practices that they've had in a few years. So he kind of goes back and forth with this group. It seems like he's pretty confident. It's just a matter of if they're able to hit their shots in a big-time environment.
I'm not sure how much you're able to talk to Coach right before each game, before they scout each opponent, but what does he think of what this Kentucky team is? I know it's still early in the season, but they have also one marquee game underneath their belts, a loss to Louisville. But what are some of the things that you're hearing as far as crosstalk goes as they scout their opponent tonight at MSG?
Yeah, that's one of the nice things with Tom Izzo. He's very media friendly. So we typically will talk to him before every game and then obviously the post-game stuff. So we do have an idea of what he thinks heading into this one. He knows Kentucky's a very deep team. I think they're injured. They have a few injuries right now, Kentucky, so I'm not sure how that'll affect them. But he does view them as a little more talented than Arkansas. They're not as young as Arkansas is. Arkansas had a few freshmen come into that environment at the Breslin Center that was probably shocking to them. But Kentucky, they have a few veteran guys, and they're deep. So I think that's something that Michigan State's looking at that could be a problem, especially if, the bench of Kentucky is able to outplay the bench of Michigan State.
Absolutely. I'll get into more individual basketball stuff here in a minute, but I thought something a big picture because Tom Izzo is really good friends with Nick Saban. Of course, their time at Michigan State goes all the way back, I guess, to the 90s or so. And we've seen Nick Saban be very vocal about the state of college football and some of the things that are going right, but a lot of the things that are not going right. Tom Izzo was also very vocal a couple of weeks ago about a pair of players who were able to play after playing a little bit of time in basically semi-pro, actually professional basketball, not the NBA. As college athletics, reshapes itself and the NCAA and the courts get involved, how much do you think that Tom Izzo will be able to stay in the game and be able to make his voice heard as much as he does? Because I think he's a great ambassador for everything, but also think that, man, this might be wearing on his patience a little bit.
Yeah, he's said it before. He's almost too stubborn to leave the game just because even though it is changing, he doesn't like it. Obviously, he doesn't like the transfer portal or NIL, but he does know that those are the things that are going on right now, and he just has to adapt to it. They've used the transfer portal. They're still recruiting at a high level, and a lot of programs are not recruiting high school recruits, which Michigan State is, and because of it, at the moment, they have one of the top, I think some recruiting experts have it as the top recruiting class in the country right now. So they're still recruiting the high school level at a high level and using some good NIL money there to get guys to come to the program. But I do think, I don't think he's going to be a guy that brings in a G League player. I think that's something where he'll probably put his foot down. He's okay with the transfer portal. That's just what it is. But I think something like that, if it comes to that, then maybe you start to see him phase out a little bit. But 70 years old right now, and he's still going strong, a lot of energy, and you'll probably see it tonight for sure.
Absolutely. Going back to this game tonight, is it MSG? I want to ask you a personal question because I don't know. Have you covered a game there? Are you excited? What are some of the things about the mystique of this arena, this game, and then being able to have the Spartans in-house?
Yeah, I've never been to Madison Square Garden, so I'm looking forward to that. This is only my second time in New York, so it was kind of cool. Just walked around a little bit in the morning to see, the big time areas, Times Square, all that good stuff. But yeah, I'm looking forward to being inside Madison Square Garden, see why they call it the world's most famous arena. I think there was like a WWE match there last night because it was pretty crowded.
Yeah. I saw Cam Scatterboo just knock someone over with his broken ankle or whatever.
So there's a lot of people already downtown. I'm like, man, it's a Monday night, and you got all these people already out here. So yeah, it truly is a city that never sleeps. But it's been cool, and I'm looking forward to being able to be inside there.
Absolutely. We got a chance to hear from Coach Izzo, taking away some positives from their last game as they prepare for the Wildcats.
God, I love you guys. I'm ticked off, and you're finding positives. This is a reverse. This is different than normal, isn't it? There were some, and I appreciate you asking that. The positives were we out-rebounded by 20. The positives are we had, 25 assists on 28 baskets. That's a big positive. The positive, to be honest with you, we got to the free throw line 25 times. That's a positive. The positive is we only had 9 turnovers. There were a bunch of positive. The positive, I had 2 guys. I mean, I don't know if I've had a player get 18 rebounds. Have I, Jack? You would know that. 18 rebounds, 17 points is phenomenal. It's phenomenal. I mean, but he didn't guard like he needed to guard. And to be honest with you, didn't hit shots that I think he can hit and make. He was a bear on the boards, and I didn't think some other guys were as good on the boards. I thought they did a better job. So those are 5 or 6 really impressive things that they'll get credit for. It just won't be tonight.
Ian, you talked about a little bit that Tom Izzo after the last game wasn't really pleased with his leaders, some of those leaders being Jeremy Fears and Cohen Carr. What have you made from their play to start the season?
Yeah, we'll start with Fears. You know, he's the guy that Tom Izzo does view as the leader of this team. He's very vocal, sometimes almost too vocal, but they're very similar in a lot of ways, Tom and Jeremy, and that's what Tom likes. He always says, you know, the head of the snake, if it's on and it's going, then the whole body's going to follow. But if the head of the snake dies, basically the whole body just follows. So basically he knows Jeremy Fears is a key part to Michigan State's success this year. He's leading the Big Ten in assists per game right now. He's coming off a performance against San Jose State on Thursday where he had a career-high 15 points. So his game is progressing. He's a redshirt sophomore now, so his game is really improving. And, you know, he's going to be a veteran guy that's going to really help bring the energy early in this game. And when you talk about energy for Michigan State, no better player than Cohen Carr to bring the house down at any point in the game, to really spark the offense, to get the crowd going if they're Michigan State fans. And, you know, I've been covering Cohen now for 3 years, and I never get tired of seeing him dunk. It's incredible.
No question about it. One of the big things before let you go is I want to talk a little football here for a second, because it's a really interesting dynamic in the Big Ten overall. Of course, Ohio State, the number 1 team, but there is some chatter that if Michigan can come through and win a game there towards the end of the season, especially that big one there at the end of the year, they could back their way into the college football playoff. How are Michigan fans kind of shaping what this might look like and the process of being able to get 2, 3, maybe even 4 teams in that college football playoff?
Yeah, I mean, it hasn't looked pretty at times for Michigan. I mean, you looked last week against Northwestern. They have 5 turnovers, missed 2 field goals, and they still found a way to win the game. And so right now, I think they're on track to make the playoff if, you know, they're able to win out. You know, they beat Ohio State, the number 1 team in the country. I think that'll really help boost their resume. Right now, that some of their only losses are on the road at Oklahoma and then on the road at USC. So those aren't like terrible losses.
Right.
But there's been a lot of times where just Michigan has not looked exactly like a playoff team. It's kind of looked a little ugly at times. And that's just what happens with a true freshman quarterback like Bryce Underwood. He's going to make mistakes. He's learning. And I think if they are able to beat Ohio State, then I think they would be in the college football playoff.
Absolutely. Ian Kress joining us from New York City there in the Big Apple. Kentucky's about a 4.5-point favorite the last I saw. Do you have a prediction about what goes on in Madison Square tonight?
Oh, that's tough. I do think, I kind of feel like Kentucky will win. I just feel like Michigan State typically doesn't do well inside of Madison Square Garden. I think it's like 5-13 all time with Izzo as the head coach. So I do lean Kentucky, but, you know, we'll see how if Michigan State is able to hit some shots, then they'll have a very good chance to win the game. But I'd go Kentucky.
Awesome stuff. I know you're very, very busy, and I really appreciate you taking your time out here to join us on Southeast Sports Plus.
Yeah, thanks, guys.
Absolutely. Ian Kress joining us from the Big Apple. That's a really awesome assignment, to be able to go to New York City, to go to Madison Square Garden and cover your local team there, and a Michigan State team looking to stay undefeated.
Yeah, and honestly, there's 2 guys that I'm going to be paying attention to a lot tonight. It's going to be Otega Owe on Kentucky, and then Jeremy Fears. As he said, he's like the head of the snake. If the head of the snake lives, the body just keeps on living as well. But, you know, it almost sounds kind of like another guy in the SEC that has a similar last name last year in Sears on Alabama. It felt like Alabama went and basically the tide, no pun intended, went with him. I mean, he had a big game in the game where they dropped 100, and then they kind of laid an egg in the next one, and it just that's where their season ended.
Exactly. That's a good parallel between those 2 teams. And like Alabama last year, Michigan State looking to make another deep run this year. They already got 1 win over an SEC team. We'll see if they can get another tonight. Ian Kress joining us from New York City. Keep it right here on Southeast Sports Plus. We'll dive into a big weekend of college football coming up ahead. Back here on Southeast Sports Plus, Gerhard Mathangani, Patrick Walsh with you, our number one here on a Tuesday, and we're excited to be joined by our good friend Sam Granville out of Knoxville, Tennessee. And Sam, we'll talk both football and basketball here in this segment. We'll start on the gridiron first. Obviously, not the season that Tennessee fans really wanted at this point of the season, given the expectations and given everything that happened a year ago, but still a chance to end off the season on a really strong note. What'd you make of their game against New Mexico State? No, it was a game that most Tennessee fans thought they would win by a lot. They ended up winning by a lot, but just the response overall after everything that happened against the Oklahoma Sooners.
Yeah, despite it being a homecoming sellout crowd against New Mexico State, you still, just everybody in the stadium could feel the lack of energy compared to a couple weeks prior when you knew, okay, you control your own destiny. If you win, you still got a shot. You're on the outside looking in, but you got a chance to get there. And then after that third loss, with this New Mexico State game, you could just feel the lack of energy in the building, and part of that is because you're playing an opponent like New Mexico State, but you could just feel a lack of energy in the building. And the Vols, they got it done. It wasn't pretty. Joey Aguilar threw 2 interceptions in the first half. There were some injuries for the Vols late in the game that, weren't very pretty, and we're still, waiting to hear on. But overall, you just felt that lack of energy of, okay, we still have something to look forward to as far as we got some rivalry games with Florida coming up this week. We got that game with Vandy close the season that, could be the deciding factor of if Vandy gets in the playoffs. So some games that you still are looking forward to, but clearly a lack of energy of, okay, yeah, this is the modern state of college football. If you're not in the playoffs, we're not as excited.
Yeah, exactly. And we've seen other teams lose those kind of games. Penn State's a perfect example of you lost a big game and then you end up losing a couple more that you probably should have won, and then it ended up getting James Franklin fired. Not saying that Josh Heupel will get fired or anything, but we've seen teams still lose the games they're supposed to win. So credit the Vols for being able to come out and at least execute there on the field. Before we jump ahead to the Florida matchup, because there's lots to chew on there, there is an off-field issue, of course, with this football team, but it was the same off-field issue that was an off-field off-field issue before the season started with Boo Carter officially dismissed from the football team. I know Josh Heupel had some strong words to say about it after he did not show up for the homecoming game. Boo Carter's had his own spin there on social media. What's the latest as they move on without their DB?
Yeah, I think it was very clear after the game that Coach Heupel was done. You know, you give the chance, you give the second chance, you know, but at this point he's done. He's not very not one for that off the field, you know, hey, you get your way, you're the player, you know, you get to dictate how things go around here, as we clearly saw in the off season with Nico, you know, being shipped out of town. But yeah, I think that just plain and simple what it was this week is, you know, you fool me once, okay, you know, fool me twice. We're just not going to put up with that anymore. And, you know, Boo Carter's, he's a good player. You know, he's done some good things for the Vols in the return game. He's got the size and speed to this, you know, on the outside of the field, which is something that the Vols need, is they need those extra pieces, you know, at defensive back and on the outside, especially without the key contributors like Gerhard McCoy, who's been sidelined for this year. But at some point, you know, just enough is enough. And I think that was the message from Coach Heupel this week is, you know, hey, you know, you can say you're injured, say you're not injured, whatever it may be, right. But, you know, we're just not going to have that around our program anymore.
Yeah, and I think you brought up a bigger point that I wanted to touch on is the fact that it feels like this might be the start of a wave of what Coach Heupel will do with the defensive back room going into next year, because obviously you mentioned it with the injuries this year, and we saw the way that took a toll on the field, and then the Boo Carter injury. Do you think that Josh Heupel will spend a lot of this offseason really retooling that room, really finding a way to get some of the best talent in that room, whether it's transfer portal, high school, or whatever, given the fact that it was such a mess this season, both on the field and off?
I think you got to, because, you know, when you go from last year being one of the best defenses in the nation, you know, and that was your calling card last year. The reason that the Vols were in the playoffs last year was the defense. It wasn't because of, you know, any crazy numbers that were being put on offense, because that defense got them to where they are. And so I think when this season you're like, okay, now the offense is pulling their weight. Now the offense is leading the SEC, putting up enough numbers that we should be able to, you know, beat people. When your defense is letting you down, you know, you can't just let that continue to be the case into the next year. So I would assume that, you know, some defensive backs are going to be moving on. Colton Hood could be moving on to the NFL. Gerhard McCoy, obviously projected first-round pick, so he's probably going to be in the NFL next season too. So whether that's young guys or whether that's the portal, that's clearly going to be a key position group that Coach Heupel is going to have to address in the offseason.
Absolutely. Ever since the SEC went to 16 teams and no divisions, the divisions have kind of like left my mind for the most part. But every now and again, there's certain rematches or certain games that remind me of the old division days. Alabama LSU is obviously one of them. And then the other one is Tennessee, Florida. It reminds me, okay, this is a good SEC East battle. Another big game here against the Florida Gators, who we've seen they're a feisty football team at times when they want to be. What's the preparation this week as they go down to the Swamp to play the Gators?
Yeah, I mean, Coach Heupel, he even said on Monday morning, he's like, you know, we're showing the team, you know, some film. We're showing them, hey, this is what this series has been. This is what this, you know, rivalry is all about. You know, we used to control this rivalry back in the day. This was our rivalry that, you know, every once in a while we'd let one slip, but this was our controlled rivalry back in the 90s, early 2000s. And while Tennessee certainly has kind of evened things out in recent years as far as, you know, just picking up wins back and forth, they haven't been able to get those wins down in Gainesville. So I think this is a huge game just to show, like you mentioned earlier, you know, when the landslide starts to go, can you recover, or are you going to continue to let that snow roll up, you know, snowball and just let the season end in disaster and then lack of hope for the year, for the following season. So this is a huge one, not just to, okay, let's improve our bowl game for the end of the year.
Right.
And, maybe not just, okay, we got to get this because it's a rivalry, but you want to have that encouragement. You want to know heading into the year prior, okay, we finally snapped that streak. We finally beat Florida in Gainesville. We got that one off our back. We don't have to worry about that being a headline going into 2 years from now, having to go into Gainesville. So this is a game that, regardless of the records, or regardless of Florida having, 3 wins on the season, regardless of do we know which team's going to show up, which, Heisman DJ Lagway, or the Lagway where we're not sure if he, he's going to throw 4 interceptions a game. Regardless of all that outside noise, this is a game that Tennessee's like, hey, we have to go down there and we have to win this one.
Absolutely. Some of the players that are on this team right now weren't even born the last time Tennessee got a big win there in the Swamp. We got a chance to hear from head coach Josh Heupel on this rivalry
game, and it's going to be a great stage, and one play doesn't have anything to do with the next, and previous trip down to Gainesville doesn't have anything to do with it. You got to prepare the right way, you got to practice the right way, and you're going to have to go play extremely well in this one. You look at the losses that they've had, in particular here lately. It's been tight football games against really good football teams in neutral site or road games. So it's going to take our best on Saturday night.
Let's flip it over to basketball here, Sam, because this is a really interesting team, and we knew coming into the season with Coach Rick Barnes back in the fold that this was going to be an interesting team to follow. Got a nice win this past week, and now I think in a real nice position as they move forward. What do you make here of Tennessee Vols men's hoops?
Yeah, it really has been hard to gauge this team so far. One, because there's so many new pieces, and 2, because, they've started off with a weaker schedule to start the year, which for good reason. They're trying to figure out who's going to be that starting 2 guard, who's going to be the guy that's going to come in and make a difference for us at that 2 guard position, because you got Jacoby Gillespie leading the way at point guard, but then also who's going to be the primary ball handler when he comes in. Last night, there was the first step of adversity, and not in the game, not in the score in any way versus Rice, but because their forward, their returning redshirt sophomore JP Estrella, went down with a knee injury, what it appeared to. And at this point, we don't know what that's going to look like moving forward. But right now, Estrella, he might have been their, best player just as far as your most consistent. He's been coming off the bench and averaging around 17 and 9 so far this season. So we're hoping that there's nothing serious. We're hoping, that some bruising, hyperextension, a bit of a scare, because he's coming off of last season, a season-ending injury where he missed the entire year. So we're hoping right now that it's nothing serious, that we'll get Estrella back in the near future, because he's somebody that when there is so many few returning pieces, he's somebody that they need in there to say, hey, this is how we do things. This is how the operations roll. This is how Rick Barnes' system runs. And he's a fun guy. Everybody on the team loves him for his personality off the court as well. So if he can stay healthy and get back out there this season, I think they can be very good. I think they can have one of the best front courts in the entire country. They brought over Jalen Carey from Vanderbilt, who was Vandy's best player last year, and so far this season, last night was his best game, but so far he's really been about their 4th big to come into the game and kind of be a contributor on the team. So we'll see how things go. The guards are the biggest concern, because after Jacoby Gillespie, there's a pretty steep drop off as far as just consistent production. But we'll see when things, when they go to Vegas in a couple of weeks, and have to play Houston. That one's coming up quick. Yeah. And then Illinois is going to be played in Nashville in a couple weeks after that. So we'll find out just in about 2-3 weeks from now how good they are against some of the best teams in the country. But right now, they haven't really, truly been tested.
Yeah, that's pretty much what I was going to ask you. I know they've got the tune-up game against Tennessee State, and then they head out to Vegas. If they came back, let me pose a hypothetical question here to you. What record would they have to come back with for you to be able to say, all right, that was a really good trip out to Vegas, playing in a player's era that is I look at some of the teams in there, and it's loaded.
Yeah, I think it's a very lofty optimism to think that you're going to go over there and, defeat Houston. That one right off the bat is one where I think, the team, everybody within the locker room thinks, hey, we got one of the top 5 picks in the country. We got a guard and Jacoby Gillespie, who's meant for the big stage. He was on the big stage last year. He helped lead his team in Maryland to the Sweet 16. Mm-hmm. You got some guys that are up for the challenge, but I think knowing that game is one where you're certainly going to come in as the underdog, to say the least. I think you're okay with dropping that one as long as it's close, as long as you're not getting blown out in that matchup. But then after that, I think, the Vols feel like they can take on anybody in that tournament. I think they have the front court, like I said, that can slow things down. We can make things, we can get into a half-court system. We got some guys, Felix Ekpara, Cade Phillips, they're both excellent shot blockers. So as long as you can leave that tournament with, one loss, I think you feel great about that. 2 losses, okay, we might not be as happy, but the good competition is all that we're looking forward to seeing this time of year. And I don't think Coach Barnes cares in the slightest about losses this time of year, as long as he feels like his team is improving and moving in the right direction as far as who needs to be out on the court in a cohesive sense, finding out, okay, this didn't work in November and December. Okay, how do we change that for February and March?
Absolutely. Felix Ekpara had a season-high 20 points in the game against Rice. We got a chance to hear from Coach Rick Barnes.
Well, defensively, you look at Felix's line, man. Look, he was where is he on here? 8 for 10, 4 for 4, 8 rebounds. He picked up how many fouls? He picked up some fouls in there, and that's another thing that Nate does really well. But Felix, just he and Jalen both, our guards, our post guys, did a pretty good job when we're switching on those guards, trying to stay in front of them. And what we need from him is consistency and keep fighting for his space. And, I told him, I said, if you'll get in there and get on the free throw, he's a good free throw shooter. And I said, you got to throw up shots or go up, strong and get fouled. And but he was locked in defensively tonight, and we need that every night.
Sam, I'm looking at this Players Area Festival, and I see a funny scenario that could play out. I know, obviously, Tennessee is in it, and then the Syracuse Orange are also in it. So there's a scenario where Tennessee could face Syracuse, and then 2 days later go up to upstate New York and face them again. I just thought that was pretty funny. And if that came true, I feel like that has to be the quickest turnaround ever for an out-of-conference matchup.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd have to say it's at least very near a turnaround for that one. And, we'll have to, as you see behind me, Sam just walked in. She might be interested in that matchup.
Sam, wait. We need to see the ring. We need to see the ring.
Yeah, I was about to say.
Sam, do we have the ring? We're asking.
It's resized.
We're asking for the ring.
Is the ring? Is it? Oh, resized perfectly.
I can't figure out where the camera.
Yeah, there it is. All right, so it got resized perfectly. It's all good.
It's perfect.
The better question, has Coach Rick Barnes seen it? Because I know he was questioning it last time.
He hasn't seen it. He's been dodging me. He doesn't.
Whoa! Oh, we gotta.
You gotta show it to him before.
He's been dodging me.
You gotta show it to him before they go out to Vegas.
I know. I'm running out of time here.
I know he was concerned. Thank you, Sam. Well, that's good stuff. That's really good stuff. Sam, thank you so much for your time here today on Southeast Sports Plus. You've been amazing, and give our best to both Sam and Casey as they head over to the Swamp.
Absolutely. You guys take care.
Absolutely. That is Sam Granville joining us from Knoxville. And we got our main question answered. But
yes.
I was wondering
that was the main question. We got it in.
I was wondering about that too because even Coach Barnes was like, hey, are you sure? Are you sure this is happening? But she got it resized. Everything's good.
Everything's all good. She did say that last week she was going to go pick it up after she came on and joined us.
Right.
And we got to see it. So everything's all good. And hopefully for this Tennessee basketball team, everything's all good, and maybe the football team can exercise some demons down in Gainesville this weekend.
Absolutely. 2003, the last time Tennessee got the win there. I do expect them to get the win, but like Sam said, anything can happen here in college football. Speaking of, we'll have so much more in our first hour here on a Tuesday on Southeast Sports Plus. Stay with us. back here on Southeast Sports Plus. We saw an incredible weekend of football, especially as it relates to the running game this past week in a lot of different games. We've talked about some teams that just cannot run the football with any kind of consistency. Alabama being one of those teams that seemingly just can't run it with any kind of consistency. Even Auburn to a certain degree earlier on in the season.
As well.
South Carolina is another perfect example. But there are two teams and two individual players that can certainly run it, and they showed it this past week. Missouri running back Ahmad Hardy and Ole Miss running back Kewan Lacey. And Lacey and Hardy are both coming off unbelievable football games this past week, and we have a really interesting debate topic here.
Yeah, we'll get into the debate here in a second, but first we have to highlight the play of Ahmad Hardy. I mean, 300 rush yards, that's unheard of.
Yes.
And 3 rushing touchdowns. I don't care if it was Mississippi State. They're still an SEC team and have a stingy defense at times. I mean, they made Texas look a little bit lost for most of the game there. About a month ago. But Ahmad Hardy, I mean, we talked about him earlier in the season. He was on your Welcome to the Heisman House, and it felt like there was a little bit of a drop-off here. It felt like we didn't really talk about him as much, I think, from it started at the Alabama game, and then it went all the way up until the Vanderbilt game, and then the game last week, I believe he had a pretty good game against Texas A&M. That's right. Yeah, I think he ran for over 100, and then this one was just out of this world. But, I mean, you mentioned it. Ahmad Hardy, he's been pretty good.
Yeah.
Kewan Lacey, he's also been pretty good. So that begs the question, who's the better running back?
He's been dynamic. And it took me kind of crunching it down because I think in the aftermath of what we saw Saturday, Kewan Lacey was just outstanding in that game against the Florida Gators. They have a stingy defense there as well. We saw what they've done to a couple of really good offenses earlier in this season. I had to crunch some numbers because I have to do the thing of like who I would go with, you know what I mean, and who I would roll with. There's one interesting thing about both these guys. They're about the same stature. I had to look this up because I knew they were about the same in pads, but Kewan Lacey is listed as 5'11", 200, and Ahmad Hardy is listed as 5'10", 206. So one's a little taller, one's a little heavier, but 1 inch and 5 pounds is about the difference between these two players. And so the one thing about Hardy, I'm going to go with Hardy, and I think the reason is twofold. Ever since when Sam Horn went down and went to Bo Prabula, they knew that they had to lean on the ground game a little bit.
Right.
Then Bo Prabula goes down, and it's a freshman coming in there, and Matt Zollers, and everybody knows. We said it on this show how much they will have to run the football. So you have a heavier box, and it was stacked to try to stop the run, and he still got over 300 yards.
Yeah.
I think with that, when everybody knows it's coming and you still cannot stop it, that's when I think, okay, you take that next level. But they're the same kind of running back to me because they're both really good at the point of attack, but also have breakaway speed. Maybe Lacey's breakaway speed is a little bit faster. And I do think that a lot of Lacey's production is based on the fact that they do throw the ball so well with Trinidad Chambliss. Because we've seen good running backs come through the Ole Miss system. Quinshon Junkins comes to mind, who played at Ohio State a little while ago, now in the NFL. So I think by a slim margin, I'm going Ahmad Hardy.
You know, I see Ahmad Hardy as this year's Ashton Genty.
Okay.
Just that powerful back that'll just he can break away for speed, but he can also I don't remember what he averages on the ground, but it's got to be north of 7-8 yards per carry.
Say so, for sure,
I think at this point.
Yeah.
Kewan Lacey is like a Jahmyr Gibbs to me.
Okay,
he
like
gets
that
a lot of he scores a lot of touchdowns.
Right.
He just set the program record for a single season for an Ole Miss running back. I have to say, in my opinion, I think Kewan Lacey's the better running back, only because we've seen South Carolina's defense. Yeah, South Carolina hasn't really had a great year.
Right.
But they've been able to stop the run for the most part.
Yes.
Kewan Lacey just ran all over them.
Yeah, he did.
I mean, it's just an unreal day. I think 167 yards and a touchdown. He scored touchdown. He's had multiple touchdown games in 4 of the last 5 games. Including 3 in the last 2.
Yep.
I know the other one was against the Citadel, but, I mean, still, 31 carries for for 224 yards and 3 touchdowns against Florida.
Against Florida, yeah.
Another team that can have a stingy defense.
Yes.
You know, you don't know what you're going to get. We saw Georgia struggle with Florida earlier this year. I just think Lacey's game projects a little bit better at the next level, and I could see him as truly, I could see either one as the first running back off the board. I just think Lacey might be the first one.
Right, and to your point about Lacey, he's a bigger threat to me in the passing game as well.
Yes.
He has 24 catches, nearly 140 yards on the season catching, and by comparison, Hardy has 6 catches, 22 yards. So he's not much of a threat in the passing game.
I have a little bit of a better comparison, I think. I'm sticking with Ahmad Hardy is Ashton Genty.
Okay.
But I almost see Lacey as a prime Ezekiel Elliott, because Elliott in the past game was a little bit of a threat as well back in his Ohio State days and the first 2 years in the NFL before his off-the-field troubles. And, you know, I think he got out of shape a little bit.
Eating a lot.
Yeah, eating a lot. Not just this on first down. I mean, literally eating. But I think Lacey can provide that dual threat for an NFL team. Now it's obviously to be determined where he's going to go. If I were to guess, probably first round.
I would think so.
I would think so.
Round. Yeah, using those running backs.
We'd have to see. I mean, now is where we start doing the mock drafts, because now we start to be able to not confidently project where teams are going to end up, but we're starting to get a little bit of a sense. It's looking like the Titans might get the number 1 pick again. Honestly, the best thing they would do is probably trade that for. Man, if the Titans would trade down and get a couple of first-round picks back, I mean, that'd be incredible for them. Yeah. But I think Lacey's just a little bit better.
I do too. And Lacey, I mean, obviously coming into this year, there was going to be a lot of talk about the quarterbacks, and so there was not as much talk about him. I was actually going to go back to see. I know that Hardy played at La Monroe last year before transferring, and Lacey was at Missouri, ironically enough, before he went to Ole Miss. I do believe, unless I'm missing something, are they both true sophomores? So are they both?
I know Lacey is a true sophomore, but
I think
another storyline that we forgot to mention was Hardy's a Mississippi kid.
That's right.
And he wanted to stay in state.
Right.
And then he just ran for 300 yards and 3 touchdowns against Mississippi State.
Yeah.
And I know he was very vocal about how he wanted to stay in state and wanted to play for I don't know if he specified Ole Miss or Mississippi State. I don't think it really would have mattered to him as long as he stayed in state.
One of the SEC schools in the state of Mississippi.
Yeah.
He didn't get there. He goes to La Monroe, destroys it there, and then after leaving the Sun Belt, goes to the SEC, and he's right now, as we speak, the number 1 leading rusher in the entire country. And Lacey right there at number 3. And they're about 200 yards apart. And you mentioned they're 200 yards apart rushing, but you also mentioned the passing game element, which would almost put them neck and neck as far as total production from the offensive standpoint.
And it feels like Lacey's really started to come into his own here.
Yes.
From the midway point of the season onward. I think it's really the Georgia game where I can really pinpoint where it's like, okay, now he's really starting to develop into a league of his own. I mean, I think over those last 5 games, if my math is correct, he has 11 touchdowns on the ground, which is just unreal.
Right.
I mean, coming in, all the talk was about Trinidad Chambliss and how good the pass game is.
Right.
And it seemed like everybody forgot about the run game with Ole Miss. Well, now I think this could be, as long as Lane Kiffin stays, as long as there's no, I know he denied that there's no ultimatum that was given to him, but as long as he stays for the college football playoff game, which I think they're a lock at this point. I don't see them losing to Mississippi State, but even with a loss, if it's a close loss, I still think they get in with 2 losses. That's going to become a problem for any team.
Absolutely.
I think they might be, you could make the argument that they have one of the best offenses for a team that doesn't get a first-round bye.
No question about it. No question about it. And so there's going to be a lot of talk about Lane Kiffin obviously coming into and out of this whole coaching carousel. But I think that the system is built perfectly for Lacey's skill set, and he's taking advantage of it. And like you mentioned, I think he's gotten way more confident over the course of the last 3, 4, 5, 6 weeks for sure, running the football, and vice versa. Kiffin has put a lot more confidence in him as well. There's been a lot of confidence in Hardy all season long. He came out of the jump ready to go. We got a chance to hear from Coach Eli Drinkwitz.
Yeah, I thought the O-lines and tight ends obviously prevented penetration, allowed him to get to the second level. But then he did the rest. Once the holes started, they were playing quite a bit of man-to-man, which prevents overlap in the defense, and I think his speed really, surprised him. This game means a lot to him. He was a Mississippi young man who wasn't recruited by that school, and so it was really important and meant a lot to him, and I'm proud of him.
We talk a lot, Patrick, about these teams at the end of the year that have these high expectations, and now what they could end up doing is playing spoiler.
Yeah.
Auburn could do that to Alabama. We also have that Tennessee could do that to Vanderbilt to a certain degree, and Missouri can do this to Oklahoma. They got a big game coming up this week.
Yeah, we had Brian Brinkley on yesterday, and he was a little bit concerned, Brian Brinkley out of Oklahoma City. He was a little bit concerned for the Sooners about this game because you come off that big win against Alabama. There's the letdown factor, and look, Missouri, I know they're on their third-string quarterback and true freshman Matt Zollers.
Right.
They're still a dangerous team.
Absolutely.
Now, the only thing against Missouri in this one is Oklahoma's run defense is so good that I wouldn't be shocked if Ahmad Hardy went quiet in this game. I mean, maybe he's good for a touchdown, but I just don't see him running for over 100 yards. He's going to get the carries because Missouri's going to want to get the ball out of Matt Zoller's hands, especially against this Oklahoma defense. They're going to come in and they're going to be ready.
Yes,
because their momentum is a crazy thing in sports, and they have all the momentum in the world because they just knocked Ty Simpson out of the Heisman race, in my opinion.
Yes,
and they were feasting. I know they gave up a lot of yards, but it's that bend don't break. They didn't break, and they were able to keep it a close game and eventually come out with a win. There just is that little bit of a letdown factor that you got to keep an eye on. And you just got to finish the season strong.
Yeah.
You win the last two, you're in.
You're in. You're
and
absolutely
you've got Missouri, again, on their third-string quarterback, and then an LSU team.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that Brent Venables' defense, at least from a scheme standpoint, he will say, Ahmad Hardy's not beating us.
Yeah.
I don't care if we have to put 11 in the box if we need to make the freshman
I wouldn't be shocked if they stacked the box the whole game. I mean, if I'm Oklahoma and I'm Brent Venables, I'm saying, okay, Matt Zollers is going to beat us.
Yes.
I'm going to put all my cards in front of me right here, and I'm going to say, we cannot let Ahmad Hardy beat us. Let the true freshman beat us, because if so, then we don't deserve to win.
Exactly. And Coach Drinkwitz talked about the big game against the Sooners coming up this week.
I mean, obviously individual effort by the offensive line and the running backs, but then I thought, I just think our guys had the will. I mean, they willed it to happen. I mean, I think obviously Donovan's catch kind of jump-start the engines for everybody, but Manning. What a great yards after catch run too. So I think everybody just, again, brothers are born for adversity. We were playing for something bigger than ourselves tonight, and I think it showed.
Back middle. Coach, you kind of mentioned the difficult last few weeks. What did it say about the fan base that even amidst that they still come out, pack the stadium, were really loud in that first half, and kind of about the program you guys have built the last few years?
Yeah, always appreciative to our fans to sell out. I mean, to keep the streak going has been awesome. They've been wonderful, on this streak. And when we ran out of the tunnel, man, it was loud, and our fans were strong for us and very appreciative.
Coach Drinkwitz is known for being a fiery coach, and I expect him to continue that coming into this week. Of course, he's tied to a lot of these job openings, so we'll see how it all shows out. Speaking of fiery coaches, coming up next here on Southeast Sports Plus, we have another fiery coach, and what poses an interesting question about what SEC coach would celebrate likewise. That and more coming up next. Welcome back to Southeast Sports Plus, closing up shop here on a Tuesday. Closing first hour, I should say, not all the shop, but first hour here on a Tuesday. And one
half
of the
shop's
things,
closed.
Yeah, half the shop is going to be closing after this. But one of the things that I found really hilarious is after the K-State basketball team closed up shop on a big win, their head coach ended up doing something that I think is really contagious in basketball.
Yeah.
You probably see this in basketball more so than any other sport. I know in baseball we saw it a little bit with our boy Tony Patello. But in basketball, how about this?
Oh, man. Jerome, what are we doing? Oh, don't get hurt, Jerome. Man, I tell you what. When I go back, when I think of Jerome Tang, I think of a guy that really changed the culture around the K-State basketball program because I go back to the 2022-23 March Madness run when they had also Marquise Noel. I believe he was a 5'7", or he was a very short point guard for them. But he had limitless range. I saw him in person pull up from the logo and hit, I think, twice.
Jeez.
I mean, it's just unreal.
Right.
Definitely one of the better shooters in college basketball when he played. But, you know, the lowdown, getting everyone all hype in the locker room.
Yep.
And then they win again, and then you'd see. And then they win again, and then you see it again.
Yeah.
I mean, this dude's just in touch with the youth today. But it does beg the question, what SEC coach could we see doing this? Now, you brought up a good point before we came on the show today, and it was, well, if we were doing former head coaches, Bruce Pearl would definitely be someone that would do that.
I mean, Coach Pearl was the guy that was like in the student section with his T-shirt off. Out there just wrecking house earlier. And that actually didn't even start at Auburn.
Didn't he?
That started at Tennessee. Because he would do it during the women's basketball games at Tennessee. This was when the legendary former coach Pat Summitt was the coach there during the last part of her tenure. So in my opinion, there is no question it had been Bruce Pearl. I think Bruce Pearl, if he was coaching today, he'd still do it.
Didn't he do that at like an Auburn football game earlier this year?
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, it's just that dude, I just got to say, the college basketball world's going to miss him being a head coach. I think it's great that he's staying in as an analyst, but still, I mean, the energy he brought to that Auburn program, I mean, that's unmatched. But which active coach could you see potentially doing something like this?
I did a little brainstorm about this just to see who I could think of. You tossed out a name in Todd Golden, who I thought about. Obviously, he had his off-the-field issues last year. I think a lot of that's now kind of gone by the wayside a little bit. And the national championship, you wonder if the national championship kind of puts him in a space to where he doesn't like really, he doesn't really mix into the fray. One person I can see, though, and this one just popped into my head 20 seconds ago. Bucky McMillan, the coach at Texas A&M. Young, fiery, his teams play fiery. I think if Bucky McMillan were able to get a huge win, a big-time program-changing W, I could see him doing something like this.
Yeah, I mean, maybe a win over, I don't know, maybe like an Alabama win at home. That would get him fired up. Probably Kentucky. Florida as well.
I'm actually, as you think of yours, I'm going to pull up their roster to pull up their schedule to find out which game I could see him doing it in.
Maybe Todd Golden I could see. I think that was the first one that came to mind. But the second one that came to mind, and honestly one that I see a little bit more now, would probably be Mark Byington up in Vanderbilt. And, I mean, his team has just come out this year, had an offensive explosion that I don't think anybody could have seen coming. And that's a plus for Vanderbilt. I mean, they came into this school year. I'll back it up to the whole school year with well, we didn't really know what to expect for football. Birmingham Bowl, the rings and that stuff, that whole stuff. And then coming into the basketball season, didn't know what we were going to get. And, well, I mean, they come out and they just drop 100. And it just – the offense has been so good. And I just see him as the type of guy to just go up in the student section and get them all fired up. And going to be a big year for Vanderbilt.
A big year for Vandy. And another one I thought of maybe, and he might be a little too much to be doing it now, it would be John Calipari. The game that I could see it, how about the Florida Gators? Florida, if they beat Florida on February 7th, I see Bucky McMillan doing it. Hour number 2, Southeast Sports Plus, continues after the break.
In our neck of the woods, sports is tradition. Sports is passion. Sports is family. Sports is fun. Welcome to our house. This is Southeast Sports Plus Live with Simone Eli and Gerhard Mathangani.
Depending on which corners of the internet you find yourself on, there are plenty of different ways to find out where Lane Kiffin is going. Some say he's staying at Ole Miss, for sure. Some saying he's going to Gainesville to coach the Florida Gators, for sure. Others say he's going to LSU and Baton Rouge, for sure. It doesn't matter where you look, you see everything about Lane Kiffin because his coaching future has been the centerfold of what is going on in the world of college football. Welcome back to Southeast Sports Plus. Gerhard Mathangani, Patrick Walsh with you. Patrick, I find this drama really interesting because it really is threefold. You've said this for months now, that Lane Kiffin will be the highest paid coach going into next year, and I agree with that 100%. Now it's going to be what school is going to make him the highest paid coach. We've given our personal thoughts about probably what he should do, and the documentary obviously came out at a really interesting time to make you think one thing, that he might be staying. But there are some of these weird reports that he could be headed elsewhere, and then some sources that say that family could be steering him in a different direction.
Honestly, I think his mind changes every day about it, and my mind changes every day about if he is going to stay or not.
Yeah.
This morning or this afternoon, I know he had his appearance on the Pat McAfee show, and we were paying close attention. When I heard it, I was like, oh boy, is this going to be the LeBron, the decision 2.0? Is Lane going to announce it? But no, he was pretty much mum. He was acting a little bit weird, I thought, at first. You know, he's just kind of trying to, like, put on not really like an accent, but like kind of like acting a little bit in the beginning. And I was like, oh boy, he's gone. And then he brought in Kewan Lacey in to talk. And there was the report that Ole Miss gave him an ultimatum because they wanted to know, hey, are you going to coach us if we make the college football playoff? And we're going to give you until the Egg Bowl. He came out and flat out denied that even exists, but I don't think even if it does exist that he would admit that anyways.
Yes.
But this is a weird situation because we've been talking about it for a while now, and it's going to be the centerpiece. Now that James Franklin has a job, this is the centerpiece right now.
Right.
Lane Kiffin, where is he going to go? And you bring up the documentary, and it reminded me of, hey, he's been through this already at Ole Miss with the whole Auburn job.
Yes.
I don't know if he sees how Auburn has panned out since then. And making him be like, hey, I've already been through this. I chose to stay here, and the grass wasn't greener at Auburn. We've seen how the Tigers have panned out now. Makes me wonder, hey, do you think he's thinking of that again here?
It may be. And I think this is an interesting situation for a lot of different reasons. And I'm like you. I think that maybe, I don't know if his mind changes a lot, but, and you have to kind of read the tea leaves, and maybe he's wanting to do all this on purpose. Maybe he wants everybody to speculate, from Pat McAfee to your common person that's living
to us.
To us, the common people that are living in
Hey, Lane,
in
if you're watching.
And I do think that there's a part of him that understands, and maybe he's even poking fun at the attention that all of this is getting.
Oh, he's getting so much attention.
For sure. And I think he knows it too. And he's been a great troll of everybody with using a social media account.
Yeah.
And if you look at his social media, his post literally this past morning of his devotional talks about making big decisions and think about yourself as a 90-year-old making this decision. And even if one of the positives outweighs a laundry list of positives, you got to go with that choice. And it makes it seem, because you don't, if you're doing a direct parallel, you don't know if that one decision is the Florida Gators or that one decision is Ole Miss, and he's talking about it back and forth. Or if he just wants us all to do this mental exercise and he has this grand plan right before the Egg Bowl to come out like Leonardo DiCaprio's character in Wolf of Wall Street and be like, I'm staying. Yeah. I'm staying. And so
I'm not leaving.
And maybe all of this is gearing up towards that. But he clearly understands his space, and it's not, to me, like, I think monetarily things will change. The only reason I think that anything will change is if he feels like he can win a championship at Inter-X school, because it's Florida and LSU. If he thinks he can win the championship at blank school before he can win it at Ole Miss, I think if you look at the current college football landscape, the answer to that is obviously no. Yeah, you have a chance to win it there at Ole Miss.
It's hard to justify that being the case, because I seriously see the Ole Miss Rebels. Yeah, they won't have a first-round bye, but I could seriously see them running the table and at least making the college football playoff semifinal. I think as of right now, some people have them projected to be the 6th seed. I think that's where they are going to land right now, because I don't think Texas Tech is going to move from the 5 seed there. Georgia will obviously move up with Alabama losing, which means they would host the ACC champion. And it could be Miami, it could be Georgia Tech, who knows? But I think they win that game because the ACC has been so fraudulent. The ACC and the American both are the same in my opinion, because it's like nobody actually wants to win. Nobody's trying to win that last spot. It just seems like all-out chaos right now. Yeah. But the 1-2 punch on offense has been just detrimental to literally any team that has played them.
Right, absolutely.
And now it seems like now it seems like the defense is coming along. I think they would play Texas Tech in the second round, and Texas Tech hasn't played anybody.
No, they haven't. And I would take Ole Miss in that game, and I'm wondering what that line would be, and try to find some potential lines of. I know that they're starting to make those potential lines of college football playoff, and finding out if this team played this team on a neutral site or at a home field, who would be the favorite. And I'd love to dive into all those matchups, because I know that the combinations are endless going into that. As far as it relates to Ole, I want to chew on one point. As far as it relates to Ole Miss and this ultimatum, I think you brought up a good point. The fact that it's not, to me, even if it is true that I don't think he would ever admit it, and it actually serves him to say what he did on Pat McAfee today and come out and say that there hasn't been an ultimatum. I think it serves both parties. It serves Ole Miss and so serves Lane Kiffin. Let's just say it is true, though, that they gave him, even if it's a soft timeline. I don't know how much I like that play either. It just feels like you're walking a fine line here, because it's like you said, you're Ole Miss. Like you haven't been here before. I just don't know if giving him an ultimatum was necessarily the smartest move.
Well, you have a guy that's the head of your program right now that is thought to be leaving for these prestigious SEC programs. Right. But the guy that's at the head of your program is making your program relevant for the first time since like the 60s. Right. The last time they won a national championship, and could win a national championship for the first time in 60, 70 years. I don't know. I don't understand that. I think they're trying to lay some groundwork, but this is like a relationship, honestly.
Yeah.
It's like a dwindling relationship. You don't know what it's like right now.
Right.
Hey, like, what you doing? Oh, I'm going to visit these other guy friends. I'm going to send some of my friends to, scout out some of my other guy friends, a.k.a. I'm going to send my ex-wife and daughter reportedly spotted in Baton Rouge and another family member reportedly spotted in Gainesville.
Right.
That can't help unless... Again, it's Lane Kiffin. He could just be trolling.
He could be.
This would be the greatest troll of all time. And let me tell you, if you think Tennessee fans hated him,
oh gosh,
if he stays at Ole Miss, let me tell you,
yeah,
those Gator fans are going to be mad.
Oh, no doubt.
The LSU fans are going to be mad.
Yeah,
they're going to be mad at their own governor for trashing the own university.
Exactly.
I mean, goodness.
We got a chance to hear from Lane Kiffin. He talks about the rumors. I'll put an air quote talks about them. Listen it.
Yeah, I think the last chapter thing makes me feel like I'm like 80 years old, you know? So I don't like being old, so I don't really like that part of the story that makes me feel like I'm on my last chapter. So I love what we're doing here. Today was awesome, and I don't talk about that stuff. And really, to even talk about it right now would be so disrespectful to our players and how well they played today. So, you know, we got a lot of things going here, doing really well, and I love it here. So
it's a bit of a filibuster here, but the very last part of the question that was posed to him was, do you see yourself being the, I'm paraphrasing, do you see yourself being the head coach at Ole Miss next year? Period.
Yeah.
That is a yes or no answer. Yes, I do see myself. No, I don't see myself. And he goes about it in this long way, and he does a great job. And the question says something about, posed something about him being old. And the moment he attacked that old part of it, and I knew that he brought the energy in the room up with just mentioning, it makes me feel like I'm 80, and then everybody started laughing, I felt like, okay, that got him off the hook of being able to answer the yes or no question that was put right in front of him.
Yeah, and the last chance, last dance type thing where he's 80, and then he comes out and drops a devotional today about being a 90-year-old and what decision would you make.
Right.
I know he said that he has never made a decision based on money before, and obviously I don't think Jimmy Sexton really liked that he said that, but to me, I actually see a scenario where he's using this in his favor to try and drive up the marketing.
Yes, for sure.
And honestly, if he were to come out and say, yeah, I do see myself here at Ole Miss next year, I feel like that lowers his price a little bit.
Yeah, me too. Yeah.
But when you leave it open like that, it's like, okay, if I'm Ole Miss, I'm like, all right, panic mode is starting to go on. Like, I don't know what's going on. What is going to happen? Is Lane Kiffin going to be our head coach next year? This is a guy that's brought our program from the dumps up to, you can make the argument that they're in the S tier of the SEC.
Yeah.
We don't know if he's going to leave us for another program that's been in the S tier.
Right.
So we just got to throw the kitchen sink at him. We need to throw all the money in the world at him to try to make him to stay. And I think it's a genius. If that's what he's doing, Lane, if you're watching, I obviously I don't live inside your brain, so like I can't accurately give an answer on that. But if so, kudos to you, because I mean if this whole coaching thing doesn't work out at some point, you could be an agent for a little bit.
No question, because he knows how to play the game and play it coy. Also too, and I think a lot of people, they just think about the money aspect of it from the contract standpoint, but also too, I think that he also might want some assurances. If you just look at the top of the college football poll, when the college football poll comes out tonight, it'll be some form of Ohio State, Indiana, Texas A&M, Alabama will be in there, Texas Tech. What do all these schools have in common? They put money, big money, into the college football programs. Ohio State, people were saying that's the 33rd professional team, 32 in the NFL, and then Ohio State a year ago. Do you talk about a team like Indiana? What they just pledged to not only Kirk Cignetti, but the football department overall. That's another one. Oregon.
Virginia Tech.
We know what they just did. Virginia Tech putting
$220 million.
Exactly. We're seeing what was happening with Missouri.
Yeah.
And a bunch of financial commitments. So it might just be, hey, we want some assurances that the commitments of all of our rivals, we don't even get to Texas A&M because Texas A&M has been spilling money for forever.
Yeah.
Texas A&M, Texas, Bama, all these places have like these huge 8- and 9-figure deals that they're pledging to football, and maybe they're just making sure that they get some bottom dollars from Ole Miss to find out, hey, are you in it in the exact same way? And Nick Saban has said this about LSU, and we've heard some other people in the know that Ole Miss has a little bit more money than people might give it credit for. And same thing with LSU, that Ole Miss has, like, hey, don't think that this is like a team that's pinching pennies and coupon cutting. This is a program that's got a lot more money than people give it credit for. So maybe it's like, hey, putting those dollars and those cents to make sure that it all works out for everybody.
Look, I'm gonna make a statement that I think a lot of people are gonna disagree with me on, but I don't really care because I firmly believe that Ole Miss is a better job than LSU right now, and Ole Miss is a better job than Florida because there's a secret X amount of dollars that are being poured into the Ole Miss program
Yeah.
right now that I don't think anybody realizes. And just the mental aspect as well around the morale of the fan base.
Yeah.
What does the Florida fan base look like right now? They're angry.
Yeah.
They're
Right.
desperate for trying to get
Desperate
something.
is probably the key word.
Your
there.
leash is so short.
Uh-huh.
It was so short with Billy Napier.
Yeah, yeah. Mullen before then.
Mullen before then as well.
And Muschamp before then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The leash is so short in Baton Rouge as well.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's like, all right, well, besides Brian Kelly, all of our coaches, the last 3 of them won national championships, won SEC titles. We need to win right now because we're LSU.
Yeah.
I mean, you're almost starting to see it with Bama a little bit here too. Oh, come on. Why is Kalen DeBoer losing some of these games? I'm so used to Nick Saban just winning out
Right.
and just having perfect seasons and all that. Well, guess what? There's no such thing as a perfect season in the SEC anymore
No,
because
no.
the talent's so spread out.
Right.
So you either have to temper your expectations or just stop watching football at all.
Yeah.
And that's why I think Ole Miss, with the amount of money that they have, the commitment that I know if Kiffin stays, Ole Miss is going to give him basically whatever he wants.
Yeah. Yeah.
And Ole Miss is going to be a program to be reckoned with for a long time. And honestly, I could see Kiffin building Ole Miss into a consistent program along the likes of LSU and Florida.
Right.
Again, the grass is not always greener on the other side. And I think with the fan base that loves him and has welcomed him in with open arms, I just see that being such an important factor in his decision and why Ole Miss is a better job.
Yeah.
I made the correlation with Ryan Day earlier last week and how he had to get 24/7 security after the loss to Michigan.
Right.
You don't want to have to deal with that. If you
No.
lose to Alabama at LSU, you're going to have to deal with that. If you
Yep.
lose to Georgia at Florida, you're going to have to deal with that.
Yep.
You don't want to deal with that. You're
No.
never going to really have to deal with that at Ole Miss.
Yeah. Now you won't. And I think one of the big things for Lane Kiffin is he understands that going in that the expectations that you could still win there at the same clip. And I think that's the biggest thing. It's like, hey, 30, 40 years ago, you had a ceiling at Ole Miss that fell just short of the national championship. Then you had to go to Bama, to Georgia, to LSU, to Florida to go win a national championship. And I think now all that has changed. And I think Kirk Cignetti signaled that when he signed the extension at Indiana, because I think at Indiana it was a certain thing, a certain way too. You had a ceiling at Indiana. It was like, you're going to always be good, but you weren't going to be able to compete with the big boys. You were never going to compete with Ohio State and Michigan and all that. Now they are, and now they're beating those teams.
I think if these jobs were open last year, I could make a little bit of a different case for it because Ole Miss obviously missed the college football playoff last year. The one you could pinpoint the loss to Kentucky as the reason why. And I mean, I don't know. It's hard to compare Trinidad to Jackson Dart. I think Jackson Dart's a little bit of a better quarterback than him. So it makes you wonder what Jackson Dart would do this year. But now that they're actually competing for the college football playoff, I mean, they're pretty much a lock at this point. They've won all the games they needed to.
Yep.
If Oklahoma keeps winning, that looks like a huge win no matter what happens in week 14. I don't see him leaving right now in the midst of – and it would do more harm than good if he left after the college football playoff.
Yes.
Because then you can't do anything with the transfer portal.
Right, yeah. And of course, we already have those windows, the parameters already in the transfer portal. And Kiffin is the transfer portal king, so to speak.
He is the king.
Yeah, so we'll see if anything shakes out over there with Coach Lane Kiffin. If he does end up making that move, whether it's to Gainesville or to Baton Rouge, or if he just stays there in Oxford. The Lane watch is certainly on, though. Coming up next year on Southeast Sports Plus, we go to the hardwood, another big top 10 matchup in and around the SEC. That and more comes your way next. Welcome back to Southeast Sports Plus. Hour number 2 rolls on here. And last week we talked a lot about big basketball games that featured teams in the SEC against non-conference opponents. We talked about Kentucky, Louisville. We talked about Duke and Texas. And rolling into this week, we have a few more. Tonight, right before the College Football Playoff Selection Committee, the selection show, so to speak, from the committee have their rankings and their brackets. It is Kentucky and Michigan State. That game is at Madison Square Garden. We talked to Ian Kress at the beginning of our show today about that matchup. And then coming up tomorrow, it's another game. They call it neutral site, but it's in Chicago, Illinois, as Alabama hits the road to face a top 10 opponent. I said top 10 earlier. Alabama is just outside the top 10 at number 11. Illinois coming in at number 8 this week. And once again, we talked about the gauntlet that Nate Oates put together for his basketball team. And Bama will have to shake off that loss to Purdue very quickly as they go back on the road to the Windy City.
Yeah, Nate Oates was very outspoken about the effort that the Tide gave in that game against Purdue, getting out-rebounded by 20+, which is just unheard of for a Power 4 on Power 4 matchup. I mean, you just can never win a game when things like that happen. And, again, it doesn't get any easier now. You got Illinois, and then you have Gonzaga after this Illinois game. So we talked about before the St. John's game, what would be a realistic expectation for this Alabama team coming into the year. We didn't really know exactly what we're going to see out of the Tide this year, trying to replace all of those pieces that they lost last year after their March Madness run. And so far this year, came out against St. John's, played fantastic, got into triple digits. Purdue game was a bit of a dud. It just seems like Purdue kind of has their number. And then this is an interesting one here against Illinois because Illinois is trying to get back to the top of the basketball world. It feels like they've had a couple down-ish years since they were like a perennial number 1 seed in March Madness. But, again, another measuring stick game for Nate Oates. But I think the one thing I definitely am going to focus on tonight or tomorrow night, and as well as Tide fans in general, is, all right, how are they doing on the glass?
Yes, exactly. And I had to pull up the Ken Pom ratings just to make sure because I know Illinois has had a good offense so far. Number 3 in offensive rating according to Ken Pom. Purdue 1, Louisville 2, Illinois number 3. So this Bama defense will be tested again. And we talked about their effort against Purdue. And what I found really interesting in that game is that I think Nate Oates feels like when we play to a certain standard of our kind of basketball, it is wide open. It is like a lot of court spacing, and I think it mirrors a lot of what we see in the NBA. He believes that if they play up to that standard, then they can eclipse the 100-point mark, and they want games to go up to be higher scoring and to then be free flowing. He talks about the hard hat mentality, but I think that he's way more interested in his team playing, really solid basketball leading up to him. Now, according to the Ken Pom rankings, as far as Alabama's offense goes, they're number 12 right now in the rankings. And so I'm really interested to see how this matchup pans out with Bama on defense, on the defensive end of the floor against Illinois on offense because the Illini are very high caliber.
I wouldn't be surprised. I don't know what the over is in this game, the over-under.
I'll pull that up, yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised if it was set at right around 160, honestly. I think it's going to be a pretty high-scoring game.
Ooh, 178.
Yeah, see.
Yeah.
And doing the math there, that's almost 90 to 90.
Yeah,
right there.
Right. So they see it up and down.
It is 100%. 87-80, I think, was the final against Purdue.
Yes. 87-80. That's right.
Which, if you do the math there, that's 167.
Right.
And it was what was it again?
178.
178.
178 today. Yeah.
You add a couple more to that, that's like a 92 to 85 final.
Yep.
And that would not shock me in the slightest.
Me too. And it's interesting because the last time they played, Bama played in a NBA arena. Is when they played St. John's in Madison Square Garden. That game landed 103 to 96. So I mean, it was like a point off of 200 as far as the combined score. Now they're going back to another NBA arena, going to where the Chicago Bulls play at the United Arena. So this is not a college campus anymore. They're going back to another neutral site, big time marquee game. And it's weird because usually those are flipped in the college arenas and college coliseums. You normally see the higher scoring games, and then once they get to the NBA arena, it's different sight lines, and so things are a little bit different. But I feel it really interesting now with going the other way around, at least for one game. It's one game sample size, but Bama's offense has been really good in those big arenas.
Yeah, not only is it a good test against a really good team here, but as you mentioned, playing in these NBA arenas that should be the host site. I don't remember if Chicago is a regional site.
They are.
Okay, so they are this year, and that would be a good test for these college arena or these NBA arenas are going to be host sites for Sweet 16s and Elite 8s. So it's good to get the eyesight, as you mentioned there early.
Right
Now, I find Alabama to me is just so interesting because it reminds me of the NBA so much.
Oh yeah,
where it's just all right, we got to score. We have to outscore the other team.
Yes,
What I mean by that is we just got to have a great offense and just think about defense second.
Right.
And I feel like that's what the NBA has really turned into now. I mean, some of the NBA teams you see do have really good defense and actually care about the defensive side of things, but more often than not, it's all right, go down the court, chuck up a three.
You're right.
Run back.
Right.
I mean, Alabama, they want to get into these high-scoring battles because I think 80 points is probably the cutoff, like what they lost to Purdue.
In Purdue, yeah. Right.
87 to 80. I think if they score 80 points or fewer, they lose 9 times out of 10. If they score 85 or above, they win 9 times out of 10.
Yeah, they have to be able to score to keep it to keep it in a pace that they like it. Speaking of, I wanted to throw this at you. How many shots do you think they got up?
Oh boy.
Let's take their last 2 games. How many shots do you think they got up? Like, what was the differences in the two? Because I found this really interesting. In the Purdue game, they scored 88 points.
88 points.
And so I want you to guess the number of shots that they had in that game compared to the game that they played at MSG.
All right, so 80 points against Purdue, and there were a lot of rebounds by Purdue.
Right.
I would say 66 shots.
Oh, my gosh. You got that on the money. 66 on the money.
I promise I did not look at this beforehand.
I know you didn't.
This was on the fly.
I literally.
I was like trying to crunch the numbers in my head. I was like 66. Well, if you only took 2-pointers, it'd probably be right around like 132-ish. Man.
No, you got that. Literally, you got that on the money. They hit 16 threes that game. 16 of 43 from downtown, 66 shots. And the reason why, and this is how, I can promise you this wasn't cooked up, because I didn't even think about this until you were talking about the threshold, the minimum threshold of where Alabama likes to play as far as their offense goes. By comparison, they scored 103 points in against St. John's in Madison Square Garden. How many shots do you think they put up in that game?
My guess is probably 70.
81.
81. Yeah. I mean, that just doesn't shock me at all, because that's just the identity of this Alabama team. And another guy that is the identity right now is LeBaron Philon.
Yep, he certainly is. He won the SEC Player of the Week a couple of weeks ago, averaging 19 points per game, 20 in that first game, 25 in the game against St. John's, and then now back at it again in another NBA arena. What I found interesting about LeBaron Philon is that he was watch where he was hoisting those 3-pointers from. He wasn't hoisting it from the college line. He was hoisting it from the NBA line.
Oh, he's so ready. He's just getting ready,
Exactly. He did it at Madison Square Garden.
He would be a great pacer.
Oh, yeah.
Just chucking up threes in MSG.
Speaking as a resident Pacers fan. I love it. Nate Oates talked about scheduling really tough teams early in the non-conference part of the season.
It's kind of just the way it worked out. We pretty much had the schedule done and tacked the St. John's game on. It was the only day open in the Garden, but I don't mind it. I mean, shoot, if you're trying to win at a high level in the NCAA tournament, you're going to have to go back-to-back on 2 really good teams. And, shoot, we got another really good one. Illinois looked great against Texas Tech. Was that last night, was it? Yeah. Shoot, they're bigger than Purdue almost, I think. So if we don't get our rebounding fixed at Illinois, we're not going to be able to win that game either. So, and then we got Gonzaga after that. Gonzaga looked pretty good against Creighton the other night. So we got 4 really good games in a row. We will find out what we're good at, what we got to improve at. Tonight, we've been sounding the alarm on the rebounding deal. We got exposed tonight. Our guys are going to have to decide whether they want to have a good season or whether they're just going to get out toughed every game the rest of the year.
You mentioned this about Illinois, that this is a team that's perennially and usually in the top line, if not the number 1 seed, definitely a top 4 seed in the NCAA tournament. It feels to me like this is a bit of a resurgence of what they have been so far in the past, and kind of rekindling a lot of that. And also, they already have another big marquee win so far this season over Texas Tech.
Yeah, Texas Tech, a really good, not only football program, but a really good basketball program with JT Toppin, the Big 12 Player of the Year last year. He dropped 35 points against Illinois, but Stojakovic, their big man over there for the Fighting Illini, had 23 points in a close win at home over Texas Tech. But, yeah, as you mentioned, it just seems like Illinois has been fighting to get back to where they were a few years ago when they had Kofi Coburn back in those years. Obviously, the one game that comes to mind for me is the Loyola Chicago game when Illinois was the number 1 seed, and I think Loyola was the number 9 seed, I think, that year. I think it was the 2021 March Madness tournament, and it just felt like Illinois was an early exit, and they had Final Four hopes just like pretty much every other team does. But it felt like that year was the tip of the scales, I would say, for the program right now, and they're just fighting to get back. And I wouldn't be shocked though if Illinois would be able to pull this one off.
Yeah,
I know it's been a tough road here it was a tough last game for Alabama. And, I mean, it doesn't really get any easier on the rebounding end.
No, it doesn't. And I think when Bama does get embarrassed in one way or another, they tend to refocus. And they do a good job of refocusing and getting onto that next team. And I'm sure Brad Underwood and the Illinois basketball team understand that as well. Got a chance to hear from the Illinois head coach this week.
It's all I ever think about. It's hard to plan when if you don't think about it. And I think that's one of the things that I spend a lot of time on, is finding guys who are comfortable coming off the bench, guys that start, the lineups that work. How many minutes can guys play effectively? All of that stuff plays into role identification, and we've just been not able to do that. We haven't had everybody in practice yet, and so you just kind of got to do it with feel and play guys as they earn their minutes and earn their time back, and find the opportunities. Once games start, it's you go with what you have. So I think about it all the time, and it was nice to win the other night without Tommy, and we know what a significant piece he is. And it's Mihailo and Brandon are guys that we think can help us, and yet we just don't know. So we don't know how it all pieces together yet.
So it's Alabama and Illinois. Nice little matchup there at the United Center. A really good non-conference matchup at a site, and you mentioned this earlier, Patrick, at a site that will also be one of the regional sites coming up at the NCAA tournament. So if Alabama finds themselves in that Midwest regional, they'll be right there with another game ahead of everybody else.
Right, and I would say that this is maybe a matchup that we could see in the exact same arena a few months down the line. Now the thing is, I don't think Illinois is going to get the Midwest regional.
Right.
The selection committee doesn't really like to keep them in
unless
like
you're the
that
number
same
1
area,
seed.
and especially if it's in your own state.
Right.
I mean, I don't know how far away Champaign is from Chicago, but I don't think it's that
very far. No, it's not very far. No, so yeah, it could be an interesting matchup there. Unless they get the number 1 overall seed, they usually let the number 1 overall seed pick their regional site. So that would be the only place. That's how Auburn got to Atlanta last year. Coming up next year on Southeast Sports Plus, we talk about a great game last week as Texas A&M stays undefeated, what it means for the Aggies moving forward. That and more coming up next. Welcome back to Southeast Sports Plus. Hour number 2 continues here on a Tuesday, and we are excited to be joined by our good friend who is still alive, is still breathing, is still with us here. Parker Ream, you had one heck of a weekend. We were just talking in the break, and it's not too often that both Texas A&M and Baylor are playing in a way where you can cover both. But now you have a marathon game at Texas A&M. You drive the 90 minutes to go to Baylor. Man, how are you feeling from an energy perspective?
Pretty good. Yeah. Got a day's rest yesterday. I'm feeling rejuvenated. I honestly, it was crazy because you look at that comeback that Texas A&M had. Baylor fell down 14-0, and I was like, they could come back. They were down 23, and I said that's just 3 touchdowns and 3 2-point conversions. But it was not the same. Right. It's not the same kind of game.
Exactly. Let's chew on the Texas A&M game for a little bit because, of course, that one obviously got the country watching when they were down 27-3 and then 30-3, down 27 points, and then they started making that comeback. I feel like this game told me a lot about both teams, but probably a little bit more so about Texas A&M and being able to fend off a really good at times team at South Carolina. What did you make there of the game? Did you feel that there was a lot more disappointment about the way they started, or a lot more surprise / being pleased with the way they ended it?
Yeah, I think that obviously a lot of Aggie fans probably were pleased at the way they ended it, but the first half was just almost everything went wrong for Texas A&M that could have happened and could have went wrong. 2 interceptions for Marcel Reed, then that fumble, scoop and score lateral pass that was kind of a funky play. That went wrong. The security guard getting into it with Nick Harbor.
We didn't even talk about that yesterday.
Is a bad look. I mean, quite literally, it might have been the worst look for Texas A&M that it could have been in that first half. But we see every week that Mike Elko goes in there and gives these passionate speeches at halftime. So everybody was like, "Oh, I hope Elko gives these kind of speeches for this game." And he must have given one heck of a speech because they came out like a new team in that second half.
Yeah, you're seeing some of the numbers there for Marcel Reed. I think when it comes to the Heisman Trophy, a lot of times it just ends up going to the quarterback on the best team. I feel like a moment like Saturday, the last 30 minutes he played, because if you just look at his second half, that's a great game. And for him to do that in 30 minutes is absolutely unbelievable. What do you think that it did for him from a stature standpoint? For people who might not have known, maybe known this team is good, but might not have known how good he is. What do you think this did to elevate his standing amongst college football's elites?
Yeah, I think that the whole kind of college football landscape tuned into that game because they're like, oh, this could be the biggest upset in the country this year. And once they tuned in, Marcel Reed said, let me show you what I'm all about. And that's kind of what we saw in that second half was he looked like a Heisman candidate and the Heisman candidate that he's been playing like all season. And I think since everybody was tuned into that game to see if Texas A&M would lose to South Carolina, they saw a lot of good Marcel Reed, whereas they might not have been tuned in for the first half, just looking at the matchup on paper. So I think he really proved a lot of people wrong that, they probably looked at that first half, the start of that game, like this is the Marcel Reed of old. He's still a young quarterback. He's still maybe not in that upper echelon of players to talk about in college football. And realistically, he is. He should be talked about as one of the best quarterbacks in the country. And he showed it in that second half. I mean, you saw the numbers right there.
Parker, it seems like there's a piece of news that has gotten lost in the shuffle of the largest comeback in program history, and that's Texas A&M inking Mike Elko to a 6-year extension. What is that? What do you make out of that? Because, I mean, we opened this hour talking about Lane Kiffin and the saga there, and it's a little interesting that he hasn't signed an extension if he really does want to stay in Ole Miss. What does that say about Elko's commitment to Texas A&M?
I think it's not only Elko's commitment, but his family's commitment to College Station as well. And they've talked about how they love Aggie Land. They want to stay in College Station, and this deal proves that. something that I thought was really cool about this contract extension. And how about that, to have the rumors come out and then you lead them to the largest comeback in program history? I mean, it just kind of was like money well spent. But the coolest part about this deal is Elko has stipulations in the contract, sort of some bonuses if he hits certain benchmarks, like make it to the SEC title game, win the SEC title game, win a college football playoff game, make it to the national championship game. He gets paid a little bit of a bonus, like $250,000, maybe $1 million, if he hits those benchmarks. But part of this deal, he wanted his assistant coaches to also get bonuses if they hit those benchmarks, because he said they do as much of a job of coaching this team as I do. And I think that says a lot about kind of the culture that he's building in Aggie land. Is, it's not just him. He might be one of the top 10 highest paid coaches in college football, but he wants to make sure that his squad and his team is reflected on that success. And I think he deserves it. He's proved that he's deserved it over these past 2 years, but also there's that risk of, should we pay him this early? Obviously, Aggie fans have been wronged before. I guess that's the easiest way to put it with Jimbo Fisher. So they definitely have some PTSD there, but I think they're getting a good one with Elko.
No question about it. Anytime you have these phenomenal comebacks, I think of the Patriots against the Atlanta Falcons in the Super Bowl. I think what happened Saturday there in College Station. A lot of talk was obviously about the offense and about the special teams, but I found the defense to be tremendous as well. Shutout in the last 2 quarters of that football game. Is that the kind of performance that you want to see out of this defense as they move forward into the season? Because I think that obviously it's an old football saying that defense wins championships, but to me that was a championship performance by that defense given all that happened in the first half of that game.
They definitely turned it around. There were a few of those plays where they ran straight up the gut and no one was there to stop them. And I think that's kind of what Texas A&M fears on the defensive side, is that could happen at any given moment. But for the most part, they shored everything up past that. Towards the end of the first half, got an interception to put the Aggies in field goal range, really within the 10, and they couldn't convert. And I think that's something that could have, for a lot of these maybe average teams, taken a lot of wind out of the defense, that, hey, we got the stop, but the offense didn't deliver. But that's just not what happened. And we saw that in the second half, just absolutely nothing going on for Lenora Sellers and this Gamecocks offense. And that's something that you need to win championships. And I think if they can play like that in the second half, this Aggies team could be really, really dangerous.
Parker, everyone's talking about the comeback, but I want to flip to the first half. I mean, is there concern for Texas A&M moving forward, going down 30-3 in the first place to South Carolina?
I think when you look towards this next week, probably not with Stanford, but when you look towards the week after that in Austin, if you go down, you're not coming back if you're going down 30-3 in Austin. And I think that's something that maybe they were looking a little bit ahead. Maybe they didn't take South Carolina as seriously as they should have. And, Shane Beamer was hyping up the crowd, the South Carolina fans, as he went into the halftime locker room. And then Mike Elko was hyping up the Aggie fans as he left Kyle Field on Saturday. So I think that's something that you can't really take. You can't look ahead on the calendar, and that's something Texas A&M definitely got caught doing. And this is an experienced team. I was surprised, and I think everybody there was surprised at the showing that they put out, given South Carolina beating them in Columbia last year. I think they talked all week about this game means a little bit more because they beat us and they sent us into that downward spiral. And then they came out in the second half and looked like the number 3 team in the country, maybe the number 1 team. I don't know.
Absolutely. We got a chance to hear from Coach Mike Elko on his QB1 in Marcel Reed.
Yeah, I'm not lost for words very much, but I was lost for words with the team in the locker room after the game. I just, a lot of that emotion was just pride in who they were, how they conducted themselves. There's not a lot of teams that have a culture and a core that will just keep going. And again, even the 80-yard pass before, it just was one after another in the first half, and to not blink and really go into the locker room and still come out in the second half and compete. And then ultimately to score 28 straight points and win a football game that ends with a 99-yard drive. There's just not a lot of words for that. It was really impressive.
So Texas A&M will get SAM, and I know it confused Kirk
Herbstreit
a little while ago. That school, Sanford, actually, my dad went there and went to Beeson Divinity School. It's in Homewood, and so I'm very familiar with the Sanford football program right there across the street from where I grew up, and then, of course, it's Texas after that. I want to flip really quickly to basketball with Bucky McMillan, everybody
Former
else.
Sanford head coach.
Former Sanford head coach.
Yeah.
You're exactly right. Shaky start to the season, 2-2, but played some pretty good competition. I know it's very, very it's in its infant stages over there in College Station. What's been the overall vibe of what Texas A&M basketball has looked like through 4 games?
I think they're still trying to feel it out, and that's probably what Texas A&M fans are also doing. They're trying to feel out, is this a successful system, and how is this going to look, for the rest of the season? Because once you get into SEC play, it can't be up and down like it has been so far through the first couple games. And I think that's something they've lived and died by the 3. And when they haven't shot very well from beyond the arc, they haven't played very well, and the score reflects that. So. I think they're going to have to get that cleaned up. And this is a pretty good shooting team. I think it's just when the shots aren't falling, they can get behind. And you saw that against Oklahoma State, and that sort of sent them into a spiral. And I think it's just going to be a progression from Bucky McMillan's team and just learning to play with a whole new roster. I think, we're so close to the early part of this season that they don't really know yet what this team's going to look like come conference play or come tournament time. So I think maybe we can pump the brakes on any potential this team's not going to be as good as we thought kind of talk.
Exactly. And I think the one good thing about football doing so well is that the fact that it kind of overshadows and the fact that nobody's going to think about basketball until after the college football playoff. So by then, Bucky might have those guys just absolutely humming and hoeing before conference play begins. Parker, thank you so much. I know you've been very, very busy this past weekend and this week as well. Thank you so much for your time here today.
Yes, sir. I'll talk to you guys next week. Big one.
Big one in Austin. Huge one next week in Austin. That could shift a lot of what we see in the college football playoff. I find it really interesting here. Texas A&M is they're in a great position. I think they're locked into the college football playoff. But now it's like, how well will you be playing? I thought your question was a great one because it was that first half of concern going into the CFP.
Some part of me thinks it is a little bit of a concern because it's like, okay, you just went down to South Carolina 30-3, and South Carolina had the worst offense in the SEC. But another part of me is like, okay, it's good that this team is fighting adversity and knows that it can come back from adversity. Because, I mean, you look at Ohio State, they haven't had to face any adversity all year. They are the only team that hasn't trailed for a single second in any game.
Yes.
And that could prove troublesome come the playoff time, and these are close games, and these guys just aren't used to it. And so it's like, oh, man, why are we in these close games? We should be blowing everybody out.
Yeah, it's definitely a double-edged sword, but thankfully for Texas A&M, they've been on the right side of that so far every game this season, still unscathed. We'll find out where they sit in the latest college football playoff rankings coming up tonight. We'll give you our predictions next. Welcome back to Southeast Sports Plus, closing up shop here for real this time on a Tuesday.
The full shop will be closed.
It will be right after this. Our first time, the College Football Playoff Committee rankings at the very beginning, it was basically a carbon copy at the very top of what we saw with the AP poll. Then the same thing happened again in week 2. We know things will be different here in week 3, but what are you looking out for when the playoff committee rankings come out at about 7:30 Central?
I think the first thing I'm looking for is how far does Alabama fall? I still think they're in the college football playoff right now with 2 losses, just based on the sheer amount of wins and who they have beaten.
Right.
And during their stretch, I mean, you can't really expect a team to go through that stretch and not have a slip up here and there. I think the one thing, if they do end up missing the college football playoff, that's going to come back is that first game of the year against Florida State. Because I mean, had Florida State started to right the ship, so to speak, and actually had a good season, then we could maybe be talking about, hey, that's a quality loss. But I mean, that looks like one of the worst losses of any team
100%
that's in the mix right now. So I think that's going to be the main one for me. And then the other one that is a little bit intriguing for me is, okay, we saw Vanderbilt get some love last week. I would be shocked. I think, in my opinion, I think Vanderbilt, the committee is going to have them as the first team out in this bracket tonight.
Okay. Yeah.
I think they sit right at 11 or 12.
Yeah, they're 14 right now. Yeah.
I mean, I could see them moving up a couple.
Yeah, I could too. I find that interesting. Where I'm really interested today is to see where Notre Dame falls. And Notre Dame vis-a-vis Alabama, because these 2 teams have both the same amount of losses. They have 2 losses. Notre Dame right now is riding a 9-game winning streak.
9 game.
8 or 9 game winning streak. So they have a 9-game winning streak. They just got to win over another team that was in the top 25 in Pitt last week.
Convincing win, too. It wasn't even close.
Yeah, exactly. Very convincing. But Alabama does have that string of wins over ranked opponents. I know not all of them are ranked right now, but they still got to win over Tennessee. Still got to win over Vanderbilt. Does that offset the loss to Oklahoma? And where does Oklahoma fall? So we talked about this yesterday. If how high is Oklahoma? Is the gap between Oklahoma and Alabama 3 spots? If it's like 7, if it's like Oklahoma 8, is Bama 11? Is it 3 spots? And is Notre Dame ahead of Alabama? I think those are the 2 kind of things I'm interested in, not necessarily for this committee rankings, but just the way that they're thinking moving forward.
I think 5 is locked in at Texas Tech right now.
Yes, me too.
6 is locked in with Ole Miss. I think Oklahoma, in my honest opinion, jumps up to 7.
Jumps Oregon.
Jumps Oregon.
Now,
oh,
so
yeah. I mean, you look at Oklahoma's resume. I mean,
100%.
coming into this year, we said Oklahoma had the toughest schedule in the SEC.
Yes.
And if they made the playoff, they would have the best resume of probably any team.
Right.
I think that definitely trumps Oregon. Oregon moves to 8. I think Notre Dame moves up to 9. Alabama's 10.
Wow. Okay.
Opinion. I think Alabama's going to take a little bit of a hit here from the Oklahoma game, but it's also going to come back to that eye test. They haven't really passed the eye test in either of the last 3 games. They struggled with South Carolina. They struggled with Oklahoma, ended up losing that game. And they struggled with LSU, too, at LSU team in a down year. That's not really going to be any convincing for the committee. I know they have Eastern Illinois this week. And that sets up a monster showdown in the Iron Bowl in Week 14. A night game for the first time since 2014 in a place that Nick Saban said is haunted.
It's haunted, right.
That would be my worst nightmare.
I think if you're an Alabama fan right now, you have to be thinking like as if things could not get scarier for us. Now we got to go to Jersey.
I saw Alabama fans on Instagram like, I think the season's over. I seriously see us losing to Auburn.
Something weird is going down at Auburn. That would be interesting. Oregon to me is another really interesting scenario because Oregon plays USC this week. And I wonder,
it's going to be such a good game.
That is going to be a really good game, but also really impactful because I don't know what Bama fans need to root for, or fans of teams that are outside of that top 20, outside of that top 15 need to root for. Do you root for USC to pull off the win and take them out?
Yes, because Oregon has a little bit of a better resume, I think, than USC does. Actually, I actually, you know what? I don't even think it really matters. I think either team they'll still be fine. Alabama wins out, they're in. That's just
the bottom line. Yeah.
The good news for Alabama is you still control your own destiny. You don't need any help.
That's
but
right.
A 3-loss Alabama team does not make it in because of the loss to Florida State and the presumed loss to Auburn if they were to lose that game.
That's right. Those rankings come out at 7:30. I believe it's right in between the two big basketball games. You have the early basketball game, then the late basketball game. In between, we'll find out where all these teams sit. We'll talk about that and so much more tomorrow on Southeast Sports Plus. We'll see you then.